Banwell Hill. A Lay of the Severn Sea. Part 3rd by William Lisle Bowles. Part 3rd. The Maiden's Curse. I subjoin the plain narrative of the singular event on which this tale is founded, from Mr Polwhele, that the reader may see how far, poetically, I have departed from plain facts, and what I have thought it best to add for the sake of moral, picturesque, and poetical effect. The narrative is as follows. October, 1780. Thomas, aged 37. This man died of mental anguish, or what is called a broken heart. He lived in the village of Drannock, in the parish of Gwinnear, till an unhappy event occurred, which proved fatal to his peace of mind for more than 8 years, and finally occasioned his death. He courted Elizabeth Thomas, of the same village, who was his first cousin, and it was understood that they were under a matrimonial engagement. But in May 1772, some little disagreement having happened between them, he, out of resentment, or from some other motive, paid great attention to another girl, and on Sunday the 31st of that month, in the afternoon, accompanied her to the Methodist meeting at Wall. During their absence, the slighted female, who was very beautiful in her person, but of an extremely irritable temper, took a rope and a common prayer book, in which she had folded down the 109th Psalm, and, going into an adjacent field, hanged herself. Thomas, on his return from the preaching, inquired for Betsy, and being told she had not been seen for 2 or 3 hours, he exclaimed, "Good God! She has destroyed herself," which apprehension seems to show, either that she had threatened to commit suicide in consequence of his desertion, or that he dreaded it from a knowledge of the violence of her disposition. But when he saw that his fears were realized, and had read the psalm, so full of execrations, which she had pointed out to him, he cried out, "I am ruined for ever and ever." The very sight of this village and neighbourhood was now become insupportable, and he went to live at Marazion, hoping that a change of scene and social intercourse might expel those excruciating reflections which harrowed up his very soul, or at least render them less acute. But in this he appeared to be mistaken, for he found himself closely pursued by the evil demon, despair, whose torments no man, sure, but lovers in the damned endure. To hear the 109th Psalm would petrify him with horror, and therefore he would not attend divine service on the 22d day of the month. He dreaded to go near a reading school, lest he should hear the dreaded lesson. Whatever misfortunes befell him, and these were not a few, for he was several times hurt, and even maimed, in the mines in which he labored, he still attributed them all to the malevolent agency of the deceased, and thought he could find allusions to the whole in the calamitous legacy which she had bequeathed him. When he slumbered, for he knew nothing of sound sleep, the injured girl appeared to his imagination, with such a countenance as she retained after the rash action, and the prayer book in her hand, open at the hateful psalm, and he was frequently heard to cry out, "Oh, my dear Betsy, shut the book, etc., with a mind so disturbed and deranged, though he could not reasonably expect much consolation from matrimony, yet imagining that the cares of a family might distract his thoughts from the miserable subject by which he was harassed both by day and night, he successively paid his addresses to many girls of Marazion, but they indignantly flew from him, and with a sneer asked him, whether he was desirous of bringing all the curses in the 109th Psalm on their heads. At length, however, he succeeded with one who had less superstition and more fortitude than the rest, and he led her to St. Hilary Church, to be married, January 21, 1778. But on the road thither, they were overtaken by a sudden and violent hurricane, such as those which not unfrequently happen in the vicinity of Mount's Bay, and he, suspecting that poor Betsy rode the whirlwind and directed the storm, was convulsed with terror, and was literally coupled with fear. Such is the power of conscious guilt to impute accidental occurrences to the hand of vindictive justice, and so true is the observation of the poet, Judicium metuit sibi mens mali conscia justum. He lived long enough to have a son and a daughter, but the corrosive worm within his breast preyed upon his vitals, and at length consumed all the powers of his body, as it had long before destroyed the tranquillity of his mind, and he was released from all his pangs, both mental and corporeal, on Friday, October 20, 1780, and buried at St. Hilary. The Sunday following, during evening service, "Oh, shut the book, dear Mary, shut the book," Sir William cried, with wild and frantic look. She whom he loved was in her shroud, nor pain nor grief can visit her sad heart again. There is no sculptured tombstone at her head. 5 No rude memorial marks her lowly bed. The village children, every holiday, round the green turf, in summer sunshine play, and none, but those now bending to the tomb, remember Mary, lovely in her bloom. 10 Yet oft the hoary swain, when autumn sighs through the long grass, sees a dim form arise, that hies in glimmering moonlight to the brook, its wan lips moving, in its hand a book. So, like a bruised flower, and in the pride of youth and beauty, injured Mary died. William some years survived, but years no trace of his sick heart's deep anguish could erase. Still the dread spectre seemed to rise, and, worse, still in his ears rang the appalling curse. 20 While loud he cries, despair upon his look, "Oh, shut the book, my Mary, shut the book." The sun is slowly westering now, and lo, how beautiful steals out the humid bow, a radiant arch. Listen, whilst I relate William's dread judgment, and poor Mary's fate. I think I see the pine, that, heavily swaying, yet seems as for the dead to sigh. How many generations, since the day of its green pride, have passed, like leaves, away? 30. How many children of the hamlet played round its hoar trunk, who at its feet were laid, withered and grey old men? In life's first bloom how many has it seen borne to the tomb? But never one so sunk in hopeless woe as she who lies in the cold grave below. Her Sabbath book, from which at church she prayed, was her poor father's in that churchyard laid. For Mary grew as beautiful in youth. 39 Is taught at church the lore of heavenly truth. What different passions in her bosom strove, when first she heard the tale of village love. The youth whose voice then won her partial ear, a yeoman's son, had passed his 20th year. She scarce 18. Her mother, with the care of boding age, oft whispered, "Oh, beware." For William was a thoughtless youth, and wild, and like a colt unbroken, from a child. At length, if not to serious thoughts awake, he came to church, at least for Mary's sake. 50 Young Mary, while her father was alive, saw all things round the humble dwelling thrive. Her widowed mother now was growing old, and bit by bit their worldly goods were sold. Mary remained, her mother's hope and pride. How oft when she was sleeping by her side, that mother waked, and kissed her cheek, with tears praying for blessings on her future years, when she, her mother, earthly trials o'er, should rest in the cold grave, to grieve no more. 60 But Mary, to love's dream her heart resigned, and gave to fancy all her youthful mind. Shall I describe her? Didst thou never mark a soft blue light, beneath eyelashes dark? Such was her eyes' soft light. Her chestnut hair, light as she tripped, waved lighter to the air. And, with her prayer book, when on Sunday dressed, her looks a sweet but lowly grace expressed, as modest as the violet at her breast. Sometimes all day by her lone mother's side 70 she sat, and oft would turn, a tear to hide. Where winds the brook, by yonder bordering wood, 72 her mother's solitary cottage stood. A few white pails in front, fenced from the road the garden plot, and poor but neat abode. Before the window, mid the flowers of spring a beehive hummed, whose bees were murmuring. Beneath an ivied bank, abrupt and high, a small clear well-reflected bank and sky, in whose translucent mirror, smooth and still, 80 from time to time, a small bird dipped its bill. Here the first bluebell, and, of livelier hue, the daffodil and polyanthus grew. 'Twas Mary's care a jessamine to train, with small white blossoms, round the window pane. A rustic wicket opened to the meads, where a scant pathway to the hamlet leads, and near, a water-wheel toiled round and round, dashing the o'ershot stream, with long continuous sound. Beyond, when the brief shower had sailed away, 90 the tapering spire shone out in sunlight grey, and o'er that mountain's northern point, to sight stretching far on, the main sea rolled in light. Enter. Within, see everything how neat. One book lies open on the window seat, the spectacles are on a leaf of job. There, mark, a map of the terrestrial globe, and opposite, with its prolific stem, the Christians' tree, and New Jerusalem. 50. Here, see a printed paper, to record 100 a veritable letter from our Lord. 51. 2 books are on the window ledge beneath, the Book of Prayer, and Drelincourt on Death. Some cowslips in a cup of china placed, 104 a painted shelf above the chimney graced, grown like its mistress old, with half-shut eyes. Save when, at times, awaked by wandering flies, Tib. 52, in the sunshine of the casement lies. 'Twas springtime now, with birds the garden rung, and Mary's linnet at the window sung. 110 Whilst in the air the vernal music floats, the cuckoo only joins his 2 sweet notes. 53. But those, oh, listen, for he sings more near, so musical, so mellow, and so clear, not sweeter, where thy mighty waters sweep, Missouri, through the night of forests deep, resounds, from glade to glade, from rock to hill, while fervent harmonies the wild wood fill, the solitary note of whippoorwill. 54. Mary's old mother stops her wheel to say, 120 the cuckoo. Hark, how sweet he sings today. It is not long to Whitsuntide, and Mary then shall be a happy bride. On Sunday morn, when a slant light was flung upon the tower, and the first peal was rung, William and Mary smiling would repair, arm linked in arm, to the same house of prayer. The bells will sound more merrily, he cried, and gently pressed her hand. At Whitsuntide, she checked the rising thoughts, and hung her head. 130 And Mary, ere 1 year had passed, was dead. 'Twas said, and many would the tale believe, her shrouded form was seen upon that eve. 55. When, gliding through the churchyard, they appear 134 they who shall die within the coming year. All pale, and strangely piteous, was her look, her right hand was stretched out, and held a book. O'er it her wet hair dripped, while the moon cast a cold wan light, as in her shroud she passed. I cannot say if this were so, but late, 140 she went to Maddern's Stone. 56, to learn her fate, what there she heard ne'er came to human ears, but from that hour she oft was seen in tears. Mild zephyr breathes, the butterfly more bright strays, wavering, o'er the pales, in rainbow light. The lamb, the colt, the blackbird in the brake, seem all the vernal feeling to partake. The lark sings high in air, itself unseen, the hasty swallow skims the village green, and all things seem, to the full heart, to bring 150 the blissful breathings of the world's first spring. How lovely is the sunshine of May morn! The garden bee has wound his earliest horn, busied from flower to flower, as he would say, up, Mary, up this merry morn of May. Now lads and lasses of the hamlet bore branches of blossomed thorn or sycamore. 57. And at her mother's porch a garland hung, while thus their rural roundelay they sung, and we were up as soon as day. 58. 160 to fetch the summer home, the summer and the radiant May. 162 for summer now is come. In Maddern Vale the bellflowers bloom. 59. And wave to Zephyr's breath. The cuckoo sings in Morville Coombe, where nods the purple heath. 60. Come, dance around Glen Aston tree. We bring a garland gay, and Mary of Gwinnear shall be 170 Our Lady of the May. But where is William? Did he not declare he would be first the blossomed bough to bear? She will not join the train. And see, the flower she gathered now is fading. Hour by hour she watched the sunshine on the thatch. Again her mother turns the hourglass. Now, the pain the westering sun has left. The long May day so Mary wore in hopes and fears away. Slow twilight steals. By the small garden gate 180 she stands. Oh! William never came so late. Her mother's voice is heard. Good child, come in. Dream not of bliss on earth, it is a sin. Come, take the Bible down, my child, and read. In sickness, and in sorrow, and in need, by friends forsaken, and by fears oppressed, there only can the weary heart find rest. Her thin hands, marked by many a wandering vein, her mother turned the silent glass again. The rushlight now is lit, the Bible read, 190 yet, ere sad Mary can retire to bed, she listens. Hark! No voice, no step she hears. Oh! Seek thy bed to hide those bursting tears. When the slow morning came, the tale was told. Need it have been that William's love was cold? But hope yet whispers, dry the accusing tear. When Sunday comes, he will again be here. And Sunday came, and struggling from a cloud, the sun shone bright. The bells were chiming loud, and lads and lasses, in their best attire, 200 were tripping past. The youth, the child, the sire. But William came not. With a boding heart poor Mary saw the Sunday crowd depart. And when her mother came, with kerchief clean, the last who tottered homeward o'er the green, Mary, to hear no more of peace on earth, retired in silence to the lonely hearth. Next day the tidings to the cottage came, that William's heart confessed another flame, that, with the bailiff's daughter he was seen, 210 at the new tabernacle on the green. That cold and wayward falsehood made him prove alike a traitor to his faith and love. The bells are ringing, it is Whitsuntide, and there goes faithless William with his bride. Turn from the sight, poor Mary. Day by day, the dread remembrance wore her heart away. Untimely sorrow sat upon her cheek, and her too trusting heart was left to break. 6 melancholy months have slowly passed, 220 and dark. Is heard November's hollow blast. Sometimes, with tearful moodiness she smiled, 222 then, still and placid looked, as when a child, or raised her eyes disconsolate and wild. Oft, as she strayed the brook's green marge along, she there would sing one sad and broken song. Lay me where the willows wave, 61. In the cold moonlight, shine upon my lowly grave, sadly, stars of night. 2:30 I to you would fly for rest, but a stone, lies like lead upon my breast, and every hope is flown. Lay me where the willows wave, in the cold moonlight. Shine upon my lowly grave, sadly, stars of night. Her mother said, Thou shalt not be confined, poor maid. For thou art harmless, and thy mind 240 the air may soothe, as fitfully it blows, whispering forgetfulness, if not repose. So Mary wandered to the northern shore, 62. There oft she heard the gaunt Tregogel roar among the rocks. And when the tempest blew, and, like the shivered foam, her long hair flew, and all the billowy space was tossing wide, rock on, thou melancholy main, she cried, I love thy voice, oh, ever-sounding sea, 249 nor heed this sad world while I look on thee. Then on the surge she gazed, with vacant stare, or tripping with wild fennel in her hair, 63. Sang merrily, oh, we must dry the tear, for Mab, the queen of fairies, will be here, William, she shall know all. And then again her ditty died into its first sad strain. Lay me where the willows wave, in the cold moonlight. Shine upon my lowly grave, sadly, stars of night. 260 When home returned, the tears ran down apace. She looked in silence in her mother's face. Then, starting up, with wilder aspect cried, How happy shall we be at Whitsuntide? Then, mother, I shall be a bride, a bride. Ah! Some dire thought seems in her breast to rise. Stern with terrific joy she rolls her eyes. Her mother heeded not. Nor when she took, with more impatient haste, her Sunday book, she heeded not. For age had dimmed her sight. 270 Her mother now is left alone. 'Tis night. Mary, poor Mary, her sad mother cried, Mary, my Mary, but no voice replied. Next morn, Light-hearted William passed along, and careless hummed a desultory song, bound to St. Ives' revel. 64. Not a ray yet streaked the pale dawn of the dubious day. The sun is yet below the hills, but, look. 278. There is the tower, the mill, the stile, the brook, and there is Mary's cottage. All is still. Listen, no sound is heard but of the mill. 'Tis true, the toils of day are not begun, but Mary always rose before the sun. Still at the door, a leafless relic now, appeared a remnant of the May-Day bough. No hour-glass in the window tells the hours. Where is poor Mary, where her book? Her flowers? Ah, was it fancy? As he passed along, he thought he heard a spirit's feeble song. 65. Struck by the thrilling sound, he turned his look. 290. Upon the ground there lay an open book. One page was folded down. Spirit of grace. See. There are soils, like tear blots, on the place. It is a prayer book. Soon these words he read. Let him be desolate, and beg his bread. 66. Let there be none, not one, on earth to bless. Be his days few, his children fatherless, his wife a widow. Let there be no friend in his last moments mercy to extend. It was a prayer book he before had seen. 300. Where? When? Once more, wild terror on his mien, he read the page, an outcast. Let him lie, and unlamented and forsaken die. When he has children, may they pine away before his sight, his wife to grief a prey. Ah, 'tis poor Mary's book, the very same 306 he read with her at church, and, lo! Her name. The Book of Mary Banks. When this you see, and I am dead and gone, remember me. He trembles. Mark, the dew is on his brow. The curse is hers. He cried. I feel it now. I see already, even at my right hand, dead Mary, thy accusing spirit stand. I feel thy deep, last curse. Then, with a cry, he sunk upon the earth in agony. Feebly he rose, when, on the matted hair of a drowned maid, and on her bosom bare, the sun shone out. How horrid, the first glance of sunlight, on that altered countenance. The eyes were open, but though cold and dim, 320 fixed with accusing ghastliness on him. Merciful God, with faltering voice he cries, hide me, oh, hide me from the sight. Those eyes, they glare on me. Oh, hide me with the dead. The curse, the deep curse rests upon my head. Alas, poor maid, 'twas frenzy fired thy breast, which prompted horrors not to be expressed. Whilst ever at thy side the foul fiend stood, and, laughing, pointed to the oblivious flood. William, heart-stricken, to despair a prey, 330 soon left the village, journeying far away. For, as if Mary's ghost in judgment cried, his wife, in the first pains of childbirth, died. Who has not heard, Saint Cuthbert, of thy well? Perhaps the spirit may his fortunes tell. 67. He dropped a pebble. Mark. No bubble bright. 336 comes from the bottom. Turn away thy sight. He looks again. O God! Those eyeballs glare how terribly. Ah! Smooth that matted hair. Mary, dear Mary, thy cold course I see. 340. Rise from the fountain. Look not thus at me. I cannot bear the sight, that form, that look. Oh, shut the book. Dear Mary, shut the book. Meantime, poor Mary in the grave was laid. Her lone and grey-haired mother wept and prayed. Soon to the dust she followed, and, unknown, there they both rest without a name or stone. The village maids, who pass in summer by, still stop and say one prayer, for charity. But what of William? Hide me in the mine. 350 he cried, the beams of day insulting shine. Earth's very shadows are too gay, too bright, hide me forever in forgetful night. In vain. That form, the cause of all his woes, more sternly terrible in darkness rose. Nearer he saw, with its pale waving hand, the phantom in appalling stillness stand. The letters of the book shone through the night, more blasting. Hide, oh hide me from the sight. Ocean, To thee and to thy storms I bring 360 a heart, that not the music of the spring, nor summer piping on the rural plain, shall ever wake to happiness again. Ocean, be mine, wild as thy wastes, to roam from clime to clime. Ocean, be thou my home. Some say he died. Here he was seen no more. He went to sea, and oft, amid the roar of the wild waters, starting from his sleep, he gazed upon the wild tempestuous deep. When, slowly rising from the vessel's lee, 370 a shape appeared, which none besides could see. Then would he shriek, like one whom heaven forsook, "Oh! Shut the book, dear Mary, shut the book." In foreign lands, in darkness or in light, the same dread spectre stood before his sight. If slumber came his aching lids to close, funereal forms in long procession rose. Sometimes he dreamed that every grief was past. Mary, long lost on earth, is found at last. And now she smiled as when, in early life, 380 she lived in hope that she should be his wife. The maids are dressed in white, and all are gay, for this, he dreamed, is Mary's wedding day. Then wherefore sad? A chill comes o'er his soul, the sounds of mirth are hushed, and, hark! A toll, a slow, deep toll, and lo! A sable train of mourners, moving to the village fane. A coffin now is laid in holy ground, that, heavily, returns a hollow sound, when the first earth upon its lid is thrown. 390 that hollow sound now changes to a groan, while, rising with wan cheek, and dripping hair, and moving lips, and eyes of ghastly glare, the spectre comes again. It comes more near, 'tis Mary. And that book with many a tear is wet, which, with dim fingers, long and cold, he sees her to the glimmering moon unfold. And now her hand is laid upon his heart. Gasping, he wakes, with a convulsive start, he gazes round. Moonlight is on the tide 400 the passing keel is scarcely heard to glide. See where the spectre goes. With frenzied look he shrieks again, "Oh! Mary, shut the book." Now, to the ocean's verge the phantom flies, 404 and, hark! Far off, the lessening laughter dies. Years passed away, at night, or evening close, faint, and more faint, the accusing spectre rose. Restored from toil and perils of the main, now William treads his native place again, near the land's end, upon the rudest shore, 410 where, from the west, Atlantic surges roar. He lived, a lonely stranger, sad, but mild. All marked his sadness, chiefly when he smiled. Some competence he gained, by years of toil. So, in a cottage, on his native soil, he dwelt, remote from crowds, nor told his tale to human ear. He saw the white clouds sail oft o'er the bay, 68, when suns of summer shone, yet still he wandered, muttering and alone. At night, when, like the tumult of the tide, 420 sinking to sad repose, all trouble died, the book of God was on his pillow laid, he wept upon it, and in secret prayed. He had no friend on earth, save one blue jay, 69, which, from the Mississippi, far away, o'er the Atlantic, to his native land he brought, and this poor bird fed from his hand. In the great world there was not one beside for whom he cared, since his own mother died. Yet manly strength was his, for 20 years 430 weighed light upon his frame, though passed in tears, his age not 42, and in his face of care more than of age appeared the trace. Mary was scarce remembered. By degrees, the sights and sounds of life began to please. Ruth was a widow, who, in youth, had known 436 griefs of the heart, and losses of her own. She, patient, mild, compassionate, and kind, first woke to human sympathies his mind. He looked affectionately, when her child 440 caressed his bird, and then he stood and smiled. This widow and her child, almost unknown, lived in a cottage that adjoined his own. Her husband was a fisher, one whose life is fraught with terror to an anxious wife, night after night exposed upon the main, returning, tired with toil, or drenched with rain. His gains, uncertain is his life. He knows no stated hours of labor and repose. When others to a cheerful home retire, 450 and his wife sits before the evening fire, he, rocking in the dark, tempestuous night, haply is thinking of that social light. Ruth's husband left the bay, the wind and rain came down, the tempest swept the howling main. The boat sank in the storm, and he was found, below the rocks of the dark Lizard, drowned. 7 years had passed, and after evening prayer, to William's cottage Ruth would oft repair, and with her little son would sometimes stay, 460 listening to tales of regions far away. The wondering boy loved of those scenes to hear, of battles, of the roving buccaneer, of the wild hunters, in the forest glen, and fires, and dances of the savage men. So William spoke of perils he had passed, of voices heard amid the roaring blast, of those who, lonely and of hope bereft, upon some melancholy rock are left, who mark, despairing, at the close of day, 470 perhaps, some far-off vessel sail away. He spoke with pity of the land of slaves, and of the phantom ship that rides the waves, 70. It comes! It comes! A melancholy light gleams from the prow upon the storm of night. 'Tis here, 'tis there, in vain the billows roll. It steers right on, but not a living soul is there to guide its voyage through the dark, or spread the sails of that mysterious bark. He spoke of vast sea serpents, how they float 480 for many a rood, or near some hurrying boat lift up their tall neck, with a hissing sound, and questing turn their bloodshot eyeballs round. He spoke of sea maids, on the desert rocks, who in the sun comb their green dripping locks, while, heard at distance, in the parting ray, beyond the furthest promontory's bay, aerial music swells and dies away. One night they longer stayed the tale to hear, and Ruth that night beguiled him of a tear, 490 whene'er he told of the distressful stroke which his youth suffered. Then, she pitying spoke, and from that night a softer feeling grew, as calmer prospects rose within his view. And why not, ere the long night of the dead, the slow descent of life together tread? The day is fixed. William no more shall roam, William and Ruth shall have one heart, one home. The world shut out, both shall together pray, both wait the evening of life's changeful day. 500 she shall his anguish soothe, when he is wild, and he shall be a father to her child. Fair rose the morn, the summer air how bland. 503 the blue wave scarcely seems to touch the land. Again 'tis William's wedding day. Advance, for lo, the church in blue slate of Penzance. Their faith and troth is pledged, the rites are o'er, the nuptial band winds slow along the shore, the smiling boy beside. As thus they passed, with sudden blackness rushed the impetuous blast, 71. 510 deep thunder rolled in long portentous sound, at distance. Nearer now, it shakes the ground. Pale, William sinks, with speechless dread oppressed, as the forked flash seems darted at his breast. His beating heart is heard. Blanched is his cheek, a well-known voice seemed in the storm to speak. Aghast he cried again, with frantic look, "Oh, shut the book, dear Mary, shut the book." By late remorse he died. For, from that day, the judgment on his head, he pined away, 520 and soon an outcast suicide he lay. By the church porch rests Mary of Gwinnear, when the first cuckoo startles the cold year, and blue mint, 72, on her grave more beauteous grows. One small bird, 73, seems to sing for her repose. Near the land's end, so black and weather-beat, he lies, and the dark sea is at his feet. Thou, who hast heard the tale of the sad maid, know, conscious guilt is the accusing shade. If thou hast loved some gentle maid and true, 530 whose first affections never swerved from you, leave her not, oh, for pity and for truth. 532 leave her not, tearful in her days of youth. Too late, the pang of vain remorse shall start, and conscience thus avenge a broken heart.